On behalf of the North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition, I'd like to welcome you to our annual conference today. My name is Darrell Oswald. Thank you. I appreciate that. I wore this shirt today, so I'd be recognizable. I know I look a lot like Barney, the cartoon character, but that's why I wore it. I'll stick out. If you need to visit with me or talk to me, feel free. But I think today we have on our agenda a jam-packed conference. I think there's something in here for everybody, for the producer, for the educator, for those that work in the conservation industry. We try to do a lot of thought and planning, you know, when we put this together. We've got producer speakers. We've got Dr. Gordon Hazard, Dan Daggett, just a jam-packed lineup. And encourage you all today to network and visit with each other and visit with a mentor and learn and move along in the process. But without further ado, again, I'd like to welcome you here. Enjoy the day, and thanks for coming. So.
Okay, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items as well as explain what you have for materials with you. So you got the blue bags when you came in and registered, and in that bag we have you will have the agenda for the day. You will have the biographies for each of the speakers. So if you want to check that out, you will get each speaker introduced to you, but there will be a bit more information for you. For each of the presentations, or should I say for each of the speakers, you will either have a PowerPoint or you will have an article or some notes that go along with each speaker that will present today. So we will have a variety of different delivery methods that you will have witness to today. A couple of other items in there, you do have a sheet in there. It's got books on one side and websites on the other. Certainly check out any of those resources when you get a chance. Over there on the table, there are a number of other resources. Some of them are items for sale, different books, DVDs, that sort of thing. There's also a number of items over there that are free. So feel free to check out all of those items and see if some of those would be beneficial to you. I think they're all good resources provided by several different people, so check those out. A couple other items in your packet. One is the North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition the mentoring and membership brochure. One thing that was accomplished at our board meeting last night was that we established a membership itself. For anybody who registered today, you've automatically paid your dues for membership for the year. Hopefully that will be of benefit to you. We will also have your contact information, so you will not only know of events that are coming up, but when our newsletters start to go out, those types of items, you will have those. But if you check out that brochure, you will have a better idea of how the actual mentoring network, which has kind of been the core of the Grazing Lands Coalition here in North Dakota, that was established back in 1996. So contact information, topics, a number of resources. If utilizing the written materials is not your thing, if you'd rather just visit with someone and talk to someone about different practices or different management strategies, that's what the mentoring network is for. In addition to that, there's the North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition is sponsoring a holistic management class coming up the last week of February 24th through the 26th. That will be held in Mandan. If you're interested in that, there is another brochure in your packet that you can check that out as well. Last but not least, there is an educational event evaluation that's in your packet. Towards the end of the day, if you would please consider filling that out. That helps us to better design and implement our programs for the future. So that asks you a number of questions, and we appreciate the feedback on that as well. And I guess I'd be remiss to thank the Visitor Center from Minot. They helped put together our name tags today. They supplied these bags. There's a number of other information in there based on a calendar and other things to do with exploring Minot. So we certainly appreciate their help with this conference as well. We will have a few different door prizes as we go through the day. So with those, please, over there on the resource table, there's slips of paper and a box. So please fill out your name if you want to participate, that is. Throw it in the box, and then we have a number of those books, DVDs, and other things that we will distribute throughout the day. One thing that I would encourage you to do is if you have your cell phone on you, consider putting it on silent, vibrate. If you absolutely need to take a call, please take it out to the hallway and take your call out there so we can be courteous of the speakers today. They've put in a lot of time preparing what they have, and I think their information is going to be extremely valuable. And lastly, if there's things that you want to review about this, we are videotaping each of the speakers today, along with their PowerPoints and their information, and those will be available a bit later for you to view. I think probably on our website, but those will be. There's nothing like being at the event itself, but we will have that for review and that sort of thing as we move forward. So with that, any other announcements? Bathrooms are outside here and then down the hall just a little ways. So feel free to use those when you need to. We will have lunch in this room coming up right around noon or so. And then in the afternoon, we will have a few more speakers. So I hope you're looking forward to the day, and hopefully we've got the right kind of setup and right kind of topics for you to take part in. Any questions or any further comments? Anything I missed, Daryl? Okay. One last thing I would ask is if you did, I know in the busyness of trying to get everybody registered and checked in this morning, if you did grab a book over there, please take time at noon or at one of the breaks to just go back to registration and pay for that. We're operating on the honor system, but I think we should be all good with that. So take them back there and pay up at registration. And with that, I would like to have Jay Reiser, one of our mentors from Washburn, North Dakota, come up and introduce our first set of speakers.
Thank you, Josh. It's my privilege to be able to introduce Cody and Deanna Sand this morning from Forbes, North Dakota. Along with their 3 children, Bailey, Dessa, and Baxter, they own and operate a 2,300-acre cow-calf operation in Dickey and McIntosh counties. They began ranching on this 3rd-generation ranch in 1999, and after attending a holistic management course in 2011, they began on improving their soil health and quality of life while minimizing inputs and changing calving to be in sync with nature. They set up a managed rotational grazing system consisting of 9 miles of water pipeline with 27 tire tanks and 62 permanent cross-fence paddocks. They put 400 acres of expired CRP back into grazing lands. Their cows winter graze on rented corn stalks with minimal supplementation. And I'm real excited to hear what they have to say. Please help me in welcoming Cody and Deanna.
Thanks, Jay. Can you hear me okay? Hopefully. It is a pleasure to be with you today. A little nervous, but we were asked to share our story of how we changed our ranch. So a little background about us. Jay covered some of it, but we ranch near Forbes, North Dakota. We're in the Coteau Hills, and we're kind of located in the southeast corner of the state. We started renting our ranch from my parents in 1999, and we purchased it from them in 2001. They had went through the 80s, and they kind of wanted us to be sure this was really the path that we wanted for us. In 2003, we started leasing an additional 1,300 acres of land from an out-of-state landlord. This land is about 5 miles from our ranch, and we call that the OP, or the other place, just for simplicity. Our greatest assets on our ranch are our kids. Bailey is 16, Dessa's 14, and Baxter's 11. Assets and workers. A little background about what we did. I worked for 20 years, 60 miles from our house. Cody made custom saddles. We have a shop on our place. Kind of did that to make ends meet and support our ranching habit. We always calved our heifers in March and our cows in April. We usually put up about 3,000 bales of hay every summer. We generally ran our cows in about 3 to 4 groups, very minimal rotation. We had a little bit of cross fencing. We always weaned our calves and backgrounded our calves. Nobody volunteered to open the gates when we were doing that. To quote Mark Twain, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so." And everything that I just mentioned is what we knew for sure, what we had to do. Kind of our path to change, I was given a book by a friend of mine, The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. In it, Dave talks about having no debt and paying cash for everything, just like Grandma used to do. This kind of turned into a goal that we wanted to strive for, but it was kind of hard to do when you weren't making ends meet. Not too long after I read the book, we had a meeting with our financial advisor for our end of the year FSA analysis. We had backgrounded our calves, we sold them, we paid our bills for the year, and we had $20,000 in unmet obligations or carryover bills. Our advisor looked at us and said, "You'll have to borrow more operating next year." At that point, I saw Cody's face change. We finished our meeting and Cody looked at me. We finished our meeting and Cody looked at me and he said, "How can we possibly borrow more operating and sell the same number of calves?" So at that point, something was starting to change. Shortly after our analysis meeting, Cody actually, I was working. Cody attended the Grazing Coalition Winter Conference, which you're at. We got a flyer for a holistic ranch management class that Josh Dukart was putting on. We signed up as soon as possible. I put in for vacation days, and the ball was rolling. The class was in Bismarck in February. We drove back and forth for 3 days. We had to. We were feeding. One morning coming through Linton, the thermometer read 42 below zero, and we were kind of wondering what the heck we were doing. At the class, we were placed in small groups, and as luck would have it, we were at the same table as the smartest man in the world. Few of you know he's the smartest man in the world. It was 3 days of exciting paradigm shifts. Little changes, big changes. When we opened ourselves up to the possibility of doing things different, the options and ideas showed up really quickly. We wanted to implement instantly everything we learned, but no luck, everything was bred and we were stuck for one more calving season. That was kind of a hard one. Some of our big light bulb or aha moments from reading the book and going to the class were calving with nature, less haying, identifying our personal unfair advantages on our ranch, paying off debt, budgeting, planned grazing, temporary fencing to cross-fence pastures, that was a huge one, decreasing our inputs, the fact that we cannot go broke when we're making a profit, and the biggest paradigm shift of all was quality of life. Ranching is fun and spending time with our family is fun. First we had to change our minds before we could change anything else. Thoughts do become things. When we decided to change our ranching operations, we stopped spending money. That was the big thing. We sold as much excess equipment as we could to pay off debt. That included calf shelters, windbreak, turn tire feed bunks, V-rake, just to name a few. And I had to laugh when Cody left the yard with the final load. It looked exactly like my very favorite movie. All it was missing was Max on the front of the sleigh. So what we do now, what we're gonna talk about is not a recipe of how to change, it's just a story of decisions we made to change. We now view our ranch as a whole. We used to manage individual parts at a single time. We've come to realize that every decision we make affects something else on our ranch. We might not notice it for 6 months to a year. So once we started changing, we had to just keep continuing to change or go back to the way it was. And for us, that was not an option.
Thanks. The first change we made was summer grazing. This was a huge paradigm shift for us. We previously ran 3 to 4 separate groups of cattle all summer long, and we figured out that this was not necessary for us. After the holistic class, we changed our grazing program to one group. This decreased the time that you have to check your cows because they are in one group. You have less fence to check, and you only have to move one herd at a time. High stock density is a term that we like to use on our ranch now, and all this means is you have more cows in a smaller area for less time. We're just really starting to learn the benefits of high stock density versus the way we used to graze. We found out that we were understocking and overgrazing. And when we learned this in our holistic class, I immediately could identify all the areas in our pasture on our whole ranch where this was happening at. Now the cattle graze the pastures more evenly, and they have to eat the less desirable with the more desirable. High stock density also helps with Kentucky bluegrass invasion or brome grass or any other invasive species. And this is reducing what you don't want on your ranch. And I'm not picking on Kentucky bluegrass here because it is an extremely palatable, good grass to have. But too much of anything is bad, and a little bit of anything is always good. In just a few short years, we have seen an absolute explosion of diversity on our ranch with the way we've been grazing. And this is because we're starting to focus on what we do want. One of Baxter's favorite things to do is to find big blue stem. He's 11. I don't think I knew a big blue stem till I was 30-some years old, or what it was. It's fun to see our kids interested in these kinds of things. This is another picture of one of our native grasses. I don't know how many species we have right now or how to identify them all, but somebody told me once you don't have to know the names of every plant, you only have to know that they are different. I believe that was also the smartest man in the world. But I have learned that this one is called lead plant. It has an extremely beautiful purple flower on it, and it complements little and big blue stem. But it does not compete for water with other grasses because it is deep rooted and it draws most of its moisture from depths greater than 4 feet. It is also extremely palatable, and this is why you do not see it in overgrazed pastures. When you have more cows in a smaller space for less time, you eat so much grass and you knock the rest down, forming a litter mat. And this helps for less runoff of rain, cooler soil temperatures, and you get less evaporation. More on this subject is my daughter Dessa. She did her science fair project this year on water infiltration.
This year I did my science fair project on water infiltration and water runoff. I tested my rangeland samples with a rainfall simulator that I borrowed from NRCS in Ellendale. I chose 5 different rangelands to test, those being holistically planned grazed native rangeland, holistically planned grazed CRP rangeland, season-long grazed native rangeland, and season-long grazed expired CRP rangeland, and never been grazed wildlife native rangeland. Infiltration is what you want. It's another term for the amount of water that a soil soaks up. Runoff isn't bad, you just don't want too much of it. Holistically planned grazed native rangeland came in first place with the average infiltration being 359 milliliters and the average runoff being 5.8 milliliters. And never been grazed native wildlife rangeland got last with the average infiltration of being 203 milliliters and the average runoff being 15.4 milliliters. This just gives you a little better understanding that if you change the way you graze, the soil health will better. There's the rainfall runoff results. I also made a website for my English class this year, and it's on holistic management. It has my science fair results on it, and it will be set up over there somewhere.
Thank you, Dessa. High stock density also helps with fly control. You can't see it on this picture, but there is a spider in that hole. We just thought it was a pretty cool picture. We've noticed more insects on our place since changing our management. I don't know if they have always been there, or maybe we're just taking more time to notice these things now and becoming more observant. And also in the worst fly times of the summer, you can move your cows farther away from the pasture that they were just in, and then you leave the unhatched fly larvae when they do hatch to have no host. Dung beetles also help with fly control. These two here are called dwellers, and that is a majority of what we have on our place, but we have also found a couple of tunnelers also. They say most porons kill the dung beetles, so we have quit pouring our cattle for lice and worms. And this is just another example of managing for what we want instead of what we don't want. The biggest benefit to high stock density, in my opinion, is the rest and recovery time. Since you do have more cows in a group, you have to move them more often, therefore you are in a pasture for less time. A lot of our pastures we are only in for a few days a year. So by the next time we want to go to this pasture, it is fully recovered. And depending on our grazing plan, this could be 0 to 2 times a year. We have overgrazed some pastures pretty hard since we started this method, or what we thought was overgrazed, but with enough rest days, it seems like they always come back better than what you ever expected. You just have to give them enough time. Our CRP. We did not re-enroll 400 acres of our CRP. The biggest reason that we kept it in grass is because we wanted to keep it in grass. This summer will be the 3rd season of grazing our CRP. There's always a learning curve when you haven't done something before. Looking back, I think I was probably focused too much on the land and not enough on our cows. And the first year, I think our cattle probably paid the price nutritionally. I should have maybe moved them a little sooner or supplemented the cows, but we got through. But just in 2 short years, we're already seeing the land come back to life, and our plant spacings and everything are becoming more dense. We tried to put a value on our CRP as grazing land. We used a 36.7 acre pasture that we grazed twice this year. The first time we had 187 head of yearlings and 2-year-olds in there for 7 days, and that come up to be 980 grazing days divided by the 36.7 acre pasture for a total of 26.7 grazing days an acre. The second time we were in there, we had 89 pair in there, and we were in there for 5 days, and that came up to a total of 17.2 grazing days per acre for a total grazing days, acre days of 43.72. We tried to put just a fair market value, or kind of in our area what a grazing day would go for. And at that $1 a grazing day, it would come to $43.72 an acre. And if you would raise that to $1.25, that would come to $54.65 an acre. And again, this was just a price that we kind of tried to be fair with, and you could probably make more or less money depending on your own resources and the type of grazing management practices that you have. Equip. We decided if we wanted to use our land more effectively, we would need water in some places where there wasn't any, and more infrastructure to utilize the water and grasses better. We had a goal in mind, but to do this project on our own, it would have took us a lifetime. So we made a plan and entered into an EQIP contract through NRCS and Ashley. And one of the reasons this happened is NRC had a special EQIP program for expiring CRP to try to keep it in grass. We went from 16 pastures to 65, with the average size of our pastures at just a little under 40 acres. And we now have access to fresh water in all of those pastures. This type of management also promotes wildlife. Here's a picture of our watering system that we designed. We used 12-foot tire tanks. They hold approximately 1,500 gallons of water. We put a curb stop at each tank so we can turn them on and off individually. And we put a hydrant at every tank. We did foresee the problem of running so many cows in one group like that, that when they do come to drink, they would drink the water level down and the calves would not be able to get water. And this is why we put the hydrant by every tank, because we designed a portable calf watering system. This hooks up to with a garden hose to the hydrants that we put at every tank. It holds approximately 450 gallons of water. We put creep sides on it so the calves can get in and the cows cannot suck this water level down. And we just move it every time we move the cows. Here's a picture of our home place. Every red dot on the screen is where the water tanks are, and obviously all the fences and cross fences. This is a picture of the OP. This is that place that we leased for 10 years and just were able to purchase a couple years ago, and we were able to get water and cross fences on this place also. When we first leased this land, we entered into it was a wildlife, helped pay for some of the perimeter fences on this place. I believe we had 4 pastures on each side of the road here. And they gave us a kind of a suggested stocking rate, and that was 180 pair for 5 months. And they did not have a problem with going over that, but our landlord held us to that number. So for 10 years, that's all that we could run on that was 180 pair. So we did a comparison, and that 180 pair, we equated that to grazing days. That was 38,304 grazing days, and that came out to 29 grazing days an acre. Last year, with our high stock density, we only used 1,026 acres, leaving approximately 300 acres for this spring, for a total of 64,904 grazing days, which came to 63 grazing days an acre. So in just 2 years with a different type of management, we over doubled our grazing days. Calving date. We knew we had to change this part of our ranch for profitability and quality of life for us and our cattle. But this is one of the hardest things in my mind to change. And I think the biggest problem was giving up the control, even though it was a lot of work. I was pretty good at saving calves in snowstorms and cold weather, even if it meant staying up all night long to do so. And who knew they could do it on their own? The first year was the hardest. After a holistic course, we wanted to change so bad, but the cows were already bred that year. It wasn't the worst calving season, but it wasn't the best either. but we made it through knowing that change was coming. The next hardest thing was not turning out our bulls until August. Everything sounded so good that winter and made so much sense until your neighbors are testing bulls and turning out in June. We were really questioning ourselves at that time. But we just had to have faith and believe in our new program. And now, if I had to go back to calving our cows in March and April, there's not a doubt in my mind I'd sell every cow I have. Another huge savings in changing our calving date was to match our nutritional requirements with our forage resources. We used to feed more hay in April and May than we did all winter long. Now the cattle get optimal nutrition right before and during calving with the green grasses that are growing. We really wanted to lower our input costs, and this was a good place to do it. We no longer need windbreaks, no more calf shelters, no straw for bedding, no more warming boxes, no NIPCO heaters, no colostrum in bags, no electrolytes, and everything else that comes along with calving in a blizzard. I know at this time of the year it did not matter how much money we spent because we were going to save those baby calves. Health in our baby calves has also improved. We do not get scours or pneumonia anymore, and that lowers the stress on the cattle and on ourselves. We have no more calves to treat in the spring anymore. And we did stop ear tagging. That was another control issue that I had problems giving up. And we do not leave the house in blizzards anymore. Bailey named this cow Gopher. She's 7 to 8 years old, and she is one of our best cows. Fortunately, we do not get Gopher cows anymore. Her small ears are not a genetic defect. The first year we moved our calving back, we probably checked 2 to 3 times a day, just out of habit. Every year since, we check less and less. Last year, we only checked the cows when we had to move them, and that was probably only 2 to 3 days. We've had a few calving problems on grass, but I think we would have had these problems anyway, calving earlier in a lot. And every year we get rid of those problems, and every year our cow herd gets stronger for it. Predators. Coyotes have not been a problem while calving in the pasture on green grass. We do have 3 to 4 pairs of coyotes living on our place. And Walt Davis says in his book, How to Not Go Broke Ranching, which I would recommend for everybody to read, that coyotes are territorial. So if you have good ones, they will keep the killers out. But if we did have coyotes killing our calves, we would protect our herd. And another thing, when you calve in a big group of cows together in a small area, there is a lot easier dinner out there than a baby calf with a couple hundred angry mamas around. Winter grazing. This is one of our huge unfair advantages. We graze on mostly corn stalks about 40 miles away from our house. We made a relationship with a farmer to graze his fields. He liked the idea of breaking down his litter with cattle and getting the fertilizer. And he understood if it did not work for us financially, we wouldn't be back. And I understood that it also had to benefit him. So there has been some give and take on both sides, but we've agreed on a per head per day price that would work for the both of us, and we have built quite a good friendship over this. He will supplement our cows for us when the weather is bad, because we are 40 miles away, and there would be some days that we probably would not be able to get there. We have a little money and some labor every spring and fall putting up and taking down electric fence, but we feel the work is well worth the benefit. He prefers temporary fence as put up and taken down every year. Because we graze different fields every year, it's just easier to keep it clean. We run over approximately 1,000 to 1,500 acres, which is mostly corn stalks, some soybeans, winter wheat stubble every now and again. And this year we did graze some sunflowers. It was a quarter of sunflower stalks, and a lot of them got pushed over when they were combining. This worked extremely well once the cattle learned how to spit out the shells. We were always told and believed that we could not winter graze because we weren't West River. One night I was laying in bed thinking about this, and I realized, what the heck, we're west of the James. So the next day we woke up and we started winter grazing. We did start to we winter grazed long before we started to change everything else. The problem with this was we never cut back on our haying because we were scared of that big bad winter and not having enough feed. So the first winters, it actually cost us money to winter graze because we had to pay the price per head per day, and we're still putting up the same amount of hay like we were going to feed all winter. As we progressed, we found out 2 reasons why our winter grazing would not work to full potential until we switched our calving back to late May and June. One, our nutritional requirements changed because the coldest part of winter, our cows are not in their 3rd trimester yet. And 2, when you calved in March and April, we did feed more hay in those 2 months than all winter. And we could not turn the cows out to pasture yet because of temperature and storms, and the grass isn't really good enough yet for a lactating cow. After the holistic class, when we decided to change our calving, we decided to stop making hay. We made the first 2 winters just on the carryover hay we had, so this was a little security blanket for us. This was a scary jump. We were leaving behind everything that we knew and trusted. But somehow we knew that this was the right thing for our operation and our family. Cost of winter grazing last winter. We ran 330 cows, 24 cents a head a day for approximately 5 months. Come out to $36.24 a head. We purchased 138 ton of hay for supplementation, and that came out to $31.36 a head. We figured our hauling and our checking expense was approximately $20 a head for a total of $87.60 a cow for approximately 5 months last winter. This might look cheap to you or it might look expensive to you. Either way, our friend is happy with what he gets and the benefits he gets, and we're happy with this price also. One thing though, if you do have crop aftermath of your own that you're not using, you could do it cheaper than this price here, and then you would receive all those benefits on your own land. Haying. Like I said earlier, we had some carryover hay, which was a little security blanket. And we figured if we could make it at least 1 year without buying hay, then financially we would be better off. But we did make it 2 years without buying any, so we were able to get ahead more on our financial end. Our goal was, instead of having carryover hay sitting around, we would like to keep our carryover hay in a bank account. And every year that we can contribute to our hay bank account, we are closer to having enough resources for that one bad winter when we do need to buy some feed. We believe that the cheapest hay is the fat reservoir the cows go into winter with on their back. They can draw on this reserve all winter long. Jim Garish talks about this in his Kick the Hay Habit book, another book that I would recommend reading. We have definitely pushed the envelope on this winter grazing, but every year our cow herd does get better for it, and we were just trying to find the balance of where we need to be. The struggle for us was getting that fat on their backs, so they had it to lose. But we are working on this problem through our heifer program that I'll talk about in a little bit. My neighbor stopped putting up hay a couple years before we did. And boy, did I really have a problem with that. It just didn't make any sense to me. How could this work? So I tagged him as lazy. He is Swedish, but boy was he right. And after a couple years watching him, I wanted to be lazy too. Not Swedish, just lazy. He asked me one day if I really knew what it cost to put up hay. I didn't ever run those exact numbers because I knew that I was going to be shocked with what I found. So one day I did sit down and I did figure out what it cost us to put up hay, and it was shocking. When you add in all your land costs, your machinery costs, your fuel, twine breakdowns, you can kind of argue that it'll still work if you want to take your whole summer and sit in a tractor. But the real kicker was when I added in interest and depreciation. That really elevated our price. I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't make hay, but you should have an accurate number so you know what your cost of production is. Bale grazing. Now, in telling you all this stuff, we did not sell our mower and baler. We decided that we needed our mower to trim our ditch tops, and our new baler was depreciated to the point of being worth almost nothing. And we do have a few horses around, so we can put up a few ditch bales to get them through. Bale grazing is a great tool. We've put up about 60 acres the last 2 years, and we put those bales on some old farm ground hills to build up the organic matter in the soil. There's no topsoil left, so nothing grows on these hills but goldenrod and curly cup gumweed. We figured when we come off corn stalks sometime in March, we would use this bale grazing to extend our winter grazing. But lucky for us last spring, we had no snow, so we decided just to turn our cows out on our carryover grass. We figured those bales would be worth more to us in that bad spring than just using them because they were there. So now we have a dual purpose. We have almost a month's worth of feed for our cows, and when we do use these bales, it will start to build up the organic matter and get the land back into better production. One thing that we didn't cover in the winter grazing haying categories is the cost of feeding the hay all winter and spring, and the cost of moving snow to do so. We used to spend a lot of money just to get to our haystacks when we could have just let the cows into more bale grazing. So if you do have to feed hay, this is a little more economical way to do so. Somebody told me once, I believe it was the smartest man in the world, not to spend all your time on your bad land because the rate of return will be so much less than focusing on your good land. But if you can make improvements on your land with tools like bale grazing, it can be a huge benefit. We've been asked the question, what if the conditions are too bad to winter graze? That question is easy for us now. We'll just buy the feed we need to get by. So why do so every year just in case? Just say you get 1 to 2 bad years out of 10. Why not save a bunch of money in the good 8? I think a big percentage is fear, and that's why you need a plan. I don't recommend stop putting up hay stop feeding and start winter grazing all at once, because you probably will have a wreck. We have been working on this for many years, and our cow herd is becoming pretty savvy at grazing. So now, instead of thinking about feeding for 5 to 6 months in a bad winter, we can pretty much expect to make it till Christmas grazing. It would have to be real bad not to, and it would have to be really bad not to turn out on our carryover grass by April 1st. And we do have a month's worth of bale grazing for March, so that really leaves January and February. So the question is, can we afford to buy feed for 60 days to get our cows to bale grazing? And the answer is yes. And every year that we don't use our bale grazing, that's more days worth of feed at that time. If the only thing you do is change your calving date, the only thing you'll get is smaller calves. Carl Lundgren. How can you go from selling 600 to 700 pound backgrounded calves to selling 400 pound calves off the cow and make money? Well, you can, but you have to change your whole operation to do so. You have to change your way of thinking. Everybody always asks, how did your calves sell? Or how much did you bank on your calves? When I think the real question should be, how cheap did you run your cows last year? When you start thinking like this, it changes everything. We spent years trying to make our calves worth more money, and it always seemed to cost us more than we expected. So the answer for us was to lower our inputs and change our marketing. Cash cows. This is a term that Deanna came up with, and it is another way that we have been generating income. Open cows used to be a liability for us. Now they have become an asset for us. The way we run our operation now is we have to sell approximately 300 of something. So if we retain all our heifers and sell no cows, we will eventually run out of space. So something has to go. Of course, we have old cows every year to sell. Then we can sell some cash cows. Then we can sell some of our yearling heifers. And most of the time, our cows will bring more money than our calves. So does it matter if you have open cows or not? And we were always wondering, who said that you need a 90 to 95% breed back rate or higher? And what does it cost to get that extra 10% or that extra 5%? Could you make money on 80-cent calves? This is a quote from Daryl Oswald. Just came up one day in conversation. Hopefully we never see 80-cent calves again, but it's a good question and something just to think about. With our winter grazing and low input management, there has been an adaptive phase to our cow herd. We believe we are making the cow herd that fits our operation and environment. One question we've had over the years is, do we have the right cows for what we want to accomplish? And we have found out that we do. At one point, I thought we should sell all our cows and get some that would better fit our goals. But we started with our base herd and are doing the changing from within. There is an adaptive phase cattle have to go through to fit your environment. So by switching to different cows, we would have lost what we have already gained up to that point. But if you are just starting out, I think there is a certain or a specific, more specific type of cow that you can start with if you want to do this type of management. Carryover screw-ups. We call this something different at home, and it's a mistake in ranching in the previous year causing a decrease in profitability in the current year. We have run into some struggles in this area because we keep pushing our cows to their limit. Some years were financial reasons, and some years we just thought we were on the right track and maybe pushed them a little too hard. But if you don't push that limit, how can you find out where you're supposed to be? My friend also made another good point, that there's been all kinds of research and studies by colleges and universities to get cattle to breed and perform with all kinds of inputs and supplements, but very few, if any, studies on how to do it in a low input, low supplementation world. So trial and error, I guess. I guess it's easy to do it if you do everything they say. We found that we could get our heifers bred, but after raising that first calf and putting them back into our winter grazing program, they did not have enough fat in their fat bank for that next winter. This resulted in our second calvers that next summer to remain skinny while raising their calf and not breeding back. If they did breed back that year, they would be good cows and stay in our herd. But the only problem with this, we thought, was that our fallout rate was too high. We figured that we had three choices. We could keep doing what we were doing and have a high fallout rate. We could feed more, which we weren't going to do. Or we could change again and do something that we heard about and not breed our heifers until they were 2 years old. We chose number 3, and this year we'll be calving out our first set of 3-year-olds. The biggest question was, could we afford to do this? We figured the first year would be a little tight, but after we were in the program, it would be just fine. And as luck would have it, we hit the all-time high cattle prices this fall, so financially that worked out better for us than what we had planned. Gonna jump back to weaning for a minute. After we found out backgrounding our calves was not profitable, we heard about fence line weaning. We did this for 2 years. We liked it real well. One of the biggest reasons this works so well is you do not change the diet of your calves. After weaning like that, we left the calves all winter on grass and supplemented with a little alfalfa and a little cake. I would recommend this type of weaning to anyone. Although we had found something that has worked better for us on our ranch. And that is to leave the calves on the cow all winter. This is the 3rd winter of doing this. We will pull the calves off the cows sometime in March, a couple weeks before we bring the cows home. We will put them on grass and supplement a couple pounds of cake until around May or when the grass starts turning green. We have been surprised how well the calves do on the cows all winter. This is more profitable for us to let the cow raise her baby than for us to pull the calves and feed them all winter. Our calves did not grow as fast doing it this way. They stayed in good shape, but it was tough for them to be big enough as yearlings to get them to breed in August. So this was another reason not to breed until they were 2. And we have also heard and read about the huge benefits of the development of heifer calves when you leave them on the cows for 10 months. I did not run a comparison to show the amount of feed it takes to get a heifer to breed as a yearling. But I do know when we used to do it ourselves, it was a lot more expensive than our method now. Another reason we chose not to breed until they were 2 is longevity. I have no information on this yet because we just started this program, but we heard you could get up to 3 to 4 years at the end of the cow's life. I guess ask me in 15 years and I'll have more information on this. And here are some of our pictures of our 2-year-olds. Not weaned until 10 months of age. Never been fed in a lot. No wormers or porons. They have bunny in the fat bank. No salt or mineral. And now our cows work for us instead of us working for them. This picture is kind of ironic because that's kind of how we work now. Not very hard. And they really only know how to graze. Very little supplementation. This is a picture of a bull that we raised. He's He's 2 years old in this picture here. And we believe that cattle were intended to graze, and when they're able to, they're much happier and healthier for it.
As we've explained, change is a progression. Making our own decisions on our ranch without asking permission from any entity gives us the ability to change whatever isn't working whenever we need to. Our life has changed a lot in 4 short years since the holistic class. Our biggest goal was to get out of debt. We've currently paid off all our debt except our land loan. I'm not working off the ranch anymore, and truly none of this would have been possible without Josh and the Grazing Coalition. Their leadership in educating and sharing their stories set us up for success, and we'd like to thank them. And as the slide says, the leader always sets the trail for others to follow. Thank you.
We've probably got time for just maybe one question now, and then certainly feel free. They'll be around all day. So, any maybe 1 or 2 questions here? Anybody? Maybe over here.
What was the main reason behind not ear tags anymore? Repeat the question.
The main reason not to ear tag anymore.
Yeah, I was just wondering the main reason behind not putting on ear tags anymore.
The question is the main reason not to put on ear tags anymore. That's kind of a funny story. Actually, I believe it was Baxter when we used to ear tag our calves. He said, "So do you ear tag your calves so the cows know what calf is theirs?" And it's like, yeah. So one reason we don't is when you calve in a pasture, we don't even hardly see our calves born anymore. So by the time we would get there, you can't catch them, and we don't run a purebred business, so we don't need to know which specific calf goes to which specific cow. And when we found out once we did stop ear tagging, we just know. I mean, you're more observant, and if there's not a problem, you really don't need to know anyways. And so that's the reason. It's quality of life. We don't have to worry about getting hurt, and we never really use that information for nothing anyways. That answer your question?
Yeah. Do you hold back your own bulls then? Or do your own breeding?
We have held back, like that picture we had up there, we did have one bull we held. He's a 3-year-old this year, and we kept a few more out of this last deal. And that was one deal that I did not put in our presentation. We've been keeping all our heifers to breed, and not all of them make it, but the majority of them do. So my question is, how come all of our heifers can maintain in our herd, but we don't have any bulls good enough to stay there?
One more?
Say, you're breeding your heifers at 2 years of age, and a lot of guys that even breed them at 1 sometimes will have a heifer calf, that's not even a year breed with the cows, that's just a few months old. So how are you going to solve that? Because I can foresee that could become a problem for you. That those heifers breeding before, because they're going to reach puberty before that 2 years of age, that's holding them back.
Oh, right. The question was, what do we do so our 2-year-olds don't get bred before the time we want to? Well, when we pull them off the cow as yearlings here in March, we'll bring them home, and then we keep them separate that whole summer, and we do not run them back with the cow herd, or else they probably would get bred with the bulls.
We kind of use them as a tool on some of the bad areas, so we can manage that grass too, and kind of high stock density 2 places at once.
They're not together.
Right.
Right. Did that answer your question?
Thank you. Wow.